Well, thank you very much, Tom. It's really fun for me to be here today. This will be my first virtual workshop that I've done. I really appreciate the invitation from Tom and the Almond board. As Tom said, my name's Cliff Ohmart. I'm actually retired from SureHarvest. I retired 2 years ago, but I still help them out, so I'm a consultant to them. And my background is I worked for SureHarvest for 8 years. Actually, I started at SureHarvest about the time the CASP program began. And before that, I was Sustainable Wine Growing Director at the Lodi Wine Grape Commission. And then before that, I was a PCA in orchard crops in the Sacramento Valley, particularly working with almonds. SureHarvest has worked with the Almond board since the inception of CASP as a very trusted partner. We've helped with strategic planning, program development, and what I'm talking about today, a big role that SureHarvest plays is as the steward and supporter of the online platform that I'm going to be reviewing today. What's so important for people to understand is the confidentiality of the data that is entered into the CASP computer system. SureHarvest, their business model is all around treating grower data in a very confidential way so that it can be used for the growers' benefits. The biggest goal today, and for those of you that attended the virtual workshop, the last one, this will be a bit of a repeat, but the goal for me today is to get you interested enough in the online system is if you don't have an account to sign on, to create an account for yourself, put an orchard in the system and start using it. And I'll talk about why this is so important for you as a grower, but also you as a member of the almond industry in California. So it is very easy to create an account in the online system. And I'm going to show you how right now. It's designed with reactive web design, it's called it, so you can use it from any device, whether it's your phone. I'm looking at it, and the screenshots I'll show you are from a desktop computer. It'll work on a tablet or whatever. To get to the online platform, you go to this web address here, sustainablealmondgrowing.org. And when you get to that website, you'll see this if you're working on a desktop. If you have an account, you put your username and password here. But for those that don't have an account, you just see this big green button right in the middle of the screen. And you click on that button and you're on your way to getting an account. So what you will see next when you click on that button is providing a bit of information about yourself, your name, an email address that we can contact you through the system, your phone number, and then of course a username and a password that you want to use for using the system. And no one can get at this information unless they have your username and password. When you click next, you will be asked for a couple simple things about your farming operation, the name of your business, how many acres of almonds that you farm. Why this is important is that way the Almond board can go into the system, ask SureHarvest to give them a sum of all the acres represented in the system. And why this is important is then the Almond board can talk about, okay, X number of acres in California are represented by data in this system. When you click the last form that you need to fill out before you get your account is something very simple, the name of the orchard that you want to use first in the system and how many acres that orchard is and the county that it is in. And then when you click this submit button, you are into the system. So now I'm going to spend the next few minutes highlighting the tools that are in the system. The system was initially created to do the self-assessment that I'll talk about at the end of my presentation because I really want to emphasize the importance of that self-assessment. But one of the things since 2009 with the development of this system the Almond board is creating is a one-stop shop for growers to come, almond growers to come and utilize the really helpful tools that have been created to not only help you on your farm, help the almond industry in general. So the first thing that I'll highlight is there's the ability in the system to edit the information on an orchard. Say if you type something wrong, you type the name wrong, you can go back in and edit that. You can add orchards. One of the things I want to highlight is the system is designed to be used by growers of all sizes, from a grower with one orchard to a farming entity with multiple ranches and many orchards. The system accommodates all of that. And this is where you would add new orchards to the system based from the one you added when you signed up. Another very important aspect is getting help. There are detailed user guides for every tool in the system that you would get at through this Get Help button. You can create a printout. You can have it electronic, however you want to use it. So very quickly, you will see this menu when you sign in. And there are assessment modules for practices that you're using, and I'll talk about that at the end. There is a nitrogen management tool and an irrigation management tool that I'll briefly touch on. And I mean briefly, these are very sophisticated tools that will help you in your farming. I only can highlight it enough to get you interested to sign up and try them. And then because regulations keep evolving, I'll use that word evolving, the latest tool in the system is a tool to help you create and record your irrigation and nitrogen management plan that you have to do. And then finally, there is a whole suite of reports that you can get either printing it out or electronically saved on your computer to produce output that's going to be very useful from these tools that I'm going to be talking about. So the first tool that I'll talk about is the nitrogen management tool. To access it, you'll see that little menu that I showed you. This is really what your desktop will look like when you sign in. There's a bit of information over here recording on what you have in the system, but you click on nitrogen management tool to enter into the tool. And then when you get in, you'll have a little inner menu. If you're creating a new budget, you would click this button here. If you are working on a management plan you've already created and saved, you come over here, find it, it will be listed here, and you you click on the appropriate button to open that up. When the tool opens up, one of the things you'll see at the top of the page, this tool is based on research that was done and funded by the Almond board by Patrick Brown at UC Davis, where he discovered and determined there are 4 critical periods of the growth cycle of the almond tree in terms of the demand during each of those growth cycles. And this is how you should be gearing your nitrogen management planning. So this tool helps you work through those critical periods. Then it's basically operated by a series of tabs that you'll see here. Each one of these is a tab. We're actually looking at the fertilizer application tab, but how you would use this tool is you would start over here on the kernel yield tab and click on it. And in this place, you would enter previous yields, if you have that record, and then what you think the estimated yield is going to be in your orchard for that year you're developing your nitrogen management plan. Then each one of these tabs here is where you enter information so that the model, the nitrogen management model, can calculate for you the nitrogen that you will be getting from various sources. So, for example, you would enter your irrigation tab here would be where you would have your water sample, where you've looked at the nitrates in the water, you plug that information in from your irrigation sample, and it's going to use that to calculate based on how much you irrigate, how much nitrogen is coming from that. The same goes if you add manure, same goes with compost. You would add how much compost you've added, the percent nitrogen in the compost, it will calculate that for you. It does the nitrogen from your cover crop. And then finally, once that's all done and you can enter your leaf factor, your leaf analysis, then it will calculate for you how much fertilizer you need to apply to meet the tree demand during those 4 critical periods. Just for an example, I have basically entered already 4 different fertilizer applications using UN32 and CAN 17, using the model as to what I think I should be applying. what it will do for you as you work through the year is this blue bar. It'll create a little graph for you showing what the model is saying you should be applying. Then the red bar will be what you've actually applied. So if this was early spring, you would put your fertilizer on, you'd see a red bar, and then you would see the targets for your other applications through the year. What we're seeing here is I've actually completed the fertilizer for the year, and you can see I just sort of, this was not a real orchard, it's a test orchard I created, but I came very close to my targets. And that's the whole idea with this model, is it helps you fertilize nitrogen the most efficiently as possible to meet the tree demand based on all the other sources of nitrogen. And here's another graph, just a different way of showing what is happening. Then anytime during the year, you can click this button here that says Show PDF Summary, and it will create for you a report that you can save, you can provide to your water coalition. It has all the information we've talked about, put in its proper place with its proper calculations. It's too small to see here, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. As you can see, that was very quick. It's a very sophisticated tool. It's easy to use, but it's sophisticated, and it really takes in a lot of information. So please sign up and try it. It's a very nice, very handy tool. Very quickly now, I'll just touch on the irrigation management tool. You would click this link here to get to the tool. Similar to the nitrogen management plan in terms of how it operates, you have a series of tabs. Whoops. Somehow I went. Can I go back, Tom?
Yes, just back page.
Thank you. Thank you. I was too quick on my mouse, I guess. So now I've clicked and entered the tool, and what we're looking at here is the weekly inputs tab. But before you would start actually to do your irrigation tool, you would go to the setup tab, and there you would have the orchard that you're working on, but you would want to add some new information like your soil texture, your tree spacing, your irrigation output, your canopy shading, and the tool, the more information you could add here, the more accurate the tool is going to be in terms of helping you calculate how to meet evapotranspiration demand. The tool will also, when you tell it where your orchard is, it will connect to the local CIMA station that's nearest your orchard and automatically pull in historical ET records so that it can project through the year what you probably are going to be needing in terms of your run times. So what we're looking at here is the weekly inputs tab, where you can see that already the information that was presented, it's got how many hours you would need to run it to meet your ET based on the CIMA station. Also, how many hours to fill your soil moisture, your available soil moisture. And then over here, some optional information you could enter. If you're sampling soil moisture, you can put that here. If you're measuring rainfall, you can put that there. And the model calculates for you how much runtime that you would need to meet ET. And then here you would put what your actual runtime was, and you work your way through the year. Now I'm going to show you on the next slide. For one thing, you always want to save your work. And then on the next slide, you can create a report where you can watch how you're doing in terms of meeting ET demand. And then you can look later in the year and see what's coming in terms of the historical records. So again, this is a very, very quick look at the irrigation tool. And then to put it all together, the most recent tool that was created to meet the recent irrigation and nutrient management regulatory demands is an irrigation and nitrogen management tool. And like the other tools, to add a new worksheet, you would click this button. To work on one you've already created, you click on that one, and you would enter the tool. Once again, it works by tabs. Now you're already thinking, wow, I've already done this work on irrigation. I've already done this work on nitrogen. Can't I bring that information in? And sure enough, you can. There's this little button over here that says import. If you have that information already for your orchard, you click on that. It brings that information into this tool to put it all together to create your nitrogen management, irrigation and nitrogen management plan. And I'll just show you very quickly. It'll do a worksheet for you. This is, I think, the worksheet. Again, it's too small to read, but it shows that it's based on the requirements for your water coalition. And then it also will create for you your summary report that you need. This, I think, is the second of 3 pages for that summary report. So I do apologize for going through this very quickly, but I will go back to my goal of getting you intrigued enough to create a account to come in and try these tools. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about the grower self-assessment and what that is and why that's so important. This was the original purpose for creating CASP, was to get a software platform where a grower could do their self-assessment. It was started in 2009. So this already is 11 years old now. The first 2 chapters or modules that were created were irrigation and nutrient management, followed by the ones you see here. So basically, when you look at this list, you realize these modules cover all the important aspects of growing almonds in California. And I want to emphasize the fact that the goal, so these modules all contain good practices for growing almonds. And the real goal of these practices is to help you maximize yield and quality, but do it within the framework of sustainability, which is being economically viable, environmentally sound, and socially equitable. The other thing I want to highlight is these modules were not created by someone in a dark room with the door shut. The Almond board for each module put together a team of growers, PCAs, UC farm advisors, Almond board staff, and it was facilitated by SureHarvest, and they put the modules together to meet those goals that I just mentioned. So now, what does it actually look like? Well, here's that little menu again. And to do an assessment, you click on this link here, and it will open up the assessment part of the online system. Now, here is where all your orchards live. It's a little library. Now, if you only have 1 orchard in the system, you will only see 1 orchard here. But as you add orchards, they will be added to this list, and they exist here for your use. So to do an assessment on a given orchard, you pick the one you're working on, click on that, and the assessment opens up. And basically, you'll see it'll have the name of your orchard, the name of your company. One thing that's important to note here is it'll have the crop year that you're actually doing your assessment on. And I want to highlight here is you're always assessing the crop year that is completed. So if we were to do an assessment right now, it would be last year's crop. And the reason being, you are recording the practices you used in those orchards. And you want to be recording practices that you actually did, not practices that you think you might do, because what happens, as we all know, as the season goes on, things change. So you always assess for the previous year. We're going to look at the pest management module. And so here, for example, if you wanted to look at an assessment from a previous year, if you clicked on this and you had done previous assessments, there'd be a list of years here. You click on the year and it would pull up that assessment for the orchard we're looking at. But we're going to pretend we're doing a brand new assessment. We click on the pest management module, and here are all the other modules. So whichever one you want to use, you just click on it. We're going to click on pest management, and it opens up, and basically it's a set of practices. The pest management module is the biggest module in the assessment system. There are many practices. It's very comprehensive, and the practices are clumped by topic. Basically, it is a series of practice questions. You can see an example here. The first question in the module is, was the orchard planted by you? Yes or no? That's how this works. If it was planted by you, you click yes. If it was not planted by you, you click no. This question appears in multiple other modules. And one of the things about the system is once you've answered this question here, it will go through all the other modules where it exists and answer it however you answered it here. One thing I'm going to highlight is this save button always lives up on this part of the screen here. The system will not save your answers as you enter them. And the reason being is when it does save an answer, it actually pauses for 2 or 3 seconds while it's saving. And if that happened every time you answered a question, trust me, it would drive you crazy. The challenge is to remember every so often to click save. And I'll give you an example. The phone rings. You've spent 10 minutes answering questions. You go off and you come back a half hour later. The system will have signed you off for safety reasons, and you will have lost that work. So always click save. Very quickly, I just have called up a few of the questions in the module on navel orangeworm. I'll let you read these as I'm talking, but you go through and just click yes or no. Sometimes a not applicable is appropriate, and you have that option here. The thing that I want to highlight as you're looking at these is when you do an assessment, I think it's an incredibly valuable exercise for all sorts of reasons. I'll talk about it later, but you have to get comfortable with you're not going to be saying yes to every practice. It is impossible for anybody to do all the practices in this whole self-assessment. It's so comprehensive. There are many reasons why growers do a practice or don't do a practice, but I think as humans, we always have a little hard of a time saying, I'm not doing that. You have to get used to that. And realizing that sometimes no is okay, and we all farm differently. So then once you've done an assessment, there are some reports you can generate. I'll just highlight very quickly a useful one we call the assessment comparison report. And what this will do is, here's an example of a few questions from the pest management module. It lists your answer for that practice, and then the percentage of growers in the system or the orchards in the system where this practice is being done, and the percentage of orchards where this practice is not being done. And it allows you to confidentially, in the comfort of your own home, to look over the fence and see what your other neighbors are doing or not doing. And I think it's just very helpful to be able to do that. Very quickly, there are a couple of very useful things in the system to make your life a little easier. One is called cloning. And right here within the assessment part, you will find a little menu where you click on clone assessments. And what it'll allow you to do is say we've just finished an assessment from Grafton Ranch, and we want to clone all those answers to Lang Ranch because it's farmed the exact same way. You do this with the cloning tool by making sure we're in the right crop year, making sure that the source orchard is listed. You click on the target orchard and then make sure it's the same crop year, and then you click clone down here, and boom, it'll do that for you. The thing to remember is if there was any data in the Lang Ranch, it's going to get overwritten. I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes that I have emphasizing what's in it for me, what's in it for you as an almond grower to do these self-assessments. Well, for one thing, the SureHarvest has the ability to anonymously aggregate all the data together, so we can provide the almond board with summaries of a given practice, what percentage of orchards are doing that practice. This is a wonderful way for the almond board to get to the media, get to the consumer, get to almond buyers, saying, we know what growers are doing. Look, they're quite sustainable in California. This is, I think, probably at least a year old now. 22% of all the acres in California have been assessed with this tool. Of those farmers that did the assessment, they actually manage another 23%. So almost half the acres in California are farmed by people that are actually using this system. But of course, what we want is this to be filled in too, because the more data in the system, the more powerful it is. because you can actually provide statistically reliable information about what's being done. This is a very quick example of just the irrigation type in an orchard. You can see that says micro irrigation. 78% of the orchards that have been assessed are using micro irrigation. And then you can do things like compare it to other cropping systems, or talk about how efficient growers are using their irrigation water in California on almonds. Another great way for you as an individual grower to benefit this by using the assessment, and it saves it for you. You can come back at any time and look at it. You can actually watch your practices change over time. Say you did an assessment 5 years ago. You want to see what you're doing this year and compare it to 5 years ago. You're able to do that with this record. The other thing that I think is really good is you're going to find, wow, I'm doing a lot of really sustainable practices. And it's always nice to sort of feel good about what you're doing, because as you all know, the media is talking about how much water is being used in almonds and all this stuff. It's nice to know what things that you're doing that are quite good. However, the other aspect that I really like that I've seen, I've used these self-assessment ideas for probably 30 years now. One of the things that also it does for you is it reminds you of the things that you probably think you should be doing, but you're not for various reasons. I sort of talk about it gets past the denial factor. I like to point out that we're all human beings. One of the things that humans have in common is we're in denial. There are things that we think we should be doing, but we don't for various reasons. Some of those reasons could be good, some not. But by doing this self-assessment, I think you'll be encouraged to do more as time goes on. It's sort of like looking in a mirror and seeing what you look like and some of the things you want to improve. I literally grabbed this image off the internet the other day, and what got me is, for those of you that have been to the bee workshops, this fellow looks just like Billy Sink from Project Apis M. It's a remarkable resemblance, but it's not Billy. It just looks like him. And then, as I just mentioned, it helps with continuous improvement. And as we wind down in time, I'm just going to very quickly talk about the latest aspect of the online CASP system. It has created the ability for handlers, processors that want to get involved in this, to be able to, for growers that are willing to share their information with their handler, if that handler is using the system, they can say, yes, please share my data with my handler, and the handler can aggregate that data so they can talk to their buyers and say, look, this is what the growers are doing for the growers that I'm buying my almonds from, getting my almonds from. What it's done is it's aligning the CASP sustainability system to the global supply chain system. That what's happening is there's this thing out there called the Farm Sustainability Assessment, done by the Sustainable Ag Initiative, sort of headquartered in Europe, and it's aligning all the hard work that the almond program has done to this system, so that you as an almond grower can use this online system yourself, and yet you're aligning yourself with the global supply chain. It's a very powerful tool. And I think with that, I will stop, Tom, and see if there's any questions that I can answer. Once again, I had to go through this really quickly. It's really easy to sign up. Please do it. I think you'll find it a very rewarding experience.